Jim Lovell was born on March 25, 1928, in Cleveland, Ohio, during the height of the Great Depression, a time when opportunities were scarce and dreams often had to be forged through persistence and ingenuity. As a child, he was fascinated by flight and rocketry, inspired by the daring aviators of the era and the growing public interest in exploring beyond Earth's atmosphere. His curiosity was not merely a passing phase, it became a defining passion. Lovell devoured books on aviation, built model rockets, and followed news about experimental aircraft with an almost scholarly devotion. This early spark led him to the United States Naval Academy, where his dedication and aptitude for science and mathematics stood out. Graduating in 1952, he became a naval aviator, flying fighter jets and testing his skills under challenging conditions. His years as a test pilot were crucial. They honed his precision, decision-making, and ability to remain calm in unpredictable situations, traits that would one day become legendary. By the early 1960s, the newly formed NASA was seeking highly skilled pilots for its ambitious human spaceflight program, and Lovell's record made him an ideal candidate. When he was selected as part of NASA's second group of astronauts in 1962, it was the culmination of a dream nurtured since boyhood. Yet, it was also the beginning of a career that would push him into the annals of history. Lovell's first major mission came in December 1965, when he served as pilot on Gemini 7 alongside Commander Frank Borman. The mission's primary goal was to study the physiological effects of long-duration spaceflight, a crucial step toward sending humans to the moon. At that time, no one had spent more than a handful of days in orbit, and NASA needed to understand how the human body would cope with extended exposure to weightlessness, confinement, and radiation. Gemini 7's flight was ambitious, 14 days in a capsule barely large enough for two people to sit shoulder to shoulder. Every inch of space inside the spacecraft was occupied by control panels, equipment, and life support systems, leaving the astronauts little room to move. The conditions were grueling. There was no shower, limited fresh food, and they had to endure the constant hum of the spacecraft's systems. Despite these hardships, Lovell and Borman remained professional and disciplined, carefully following their schedules of medical experiments, observations, and engineering tests. One of the mission's historic moments came when Gemini 7 performed the first ever space rendezvous with Gemini 6A, flown by Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford. The two spacecraft flew within a foot of each other, proving that precision maneuvers in space were possible, an essential capability for the upcoming Apollo program. Throughout the mission, Lovell's meticulous handling of the spacecraft and his ability to adapt to challenges demonstrated the very qualities NASA valued most in its astronauts. When Gemini 7 splashed down after 330 hours in space, Lovell had not only set a new endurance record but also proven his resilience and skill under extreme conditions. The mission's success reinforced his reputation within NASA and set the stage for even greater challenges to come. After the success of Gemini 7, Jim Lovell was quickly assigned to another critical mission, Gemini 12, the final flight of NASA's Gemini program. In November 1966, he flew as commander alongside Buzz Aldrin, whose academic background in orbital mechanics and focus on extravehicular activity, EVA, made the pairing particularly strong. Gemini 12's primary objective was to master the challenges of working outside the spacecraft, something previous missions had struggled with. Earlier spacewalk attempts had left astronauts exhausted and sometimes unable to complete their tasks due to poor training techniques and inefficient equipment. For the Apollo program to succeed, NASA needed to perfect EVA procedures, and Lovell's calm, disciplined style was the ideal complement to Aldrin's meticulous preparation. From launch on November 11, Lovell handled the Gemini spacecraft with smooth precision. One of his first major tasks was to rendezvous with an Agena target vehicle in orbit, a maneuver that tested his piloting skill in a way no simulator could fully replicate. With careful bursts of the spacecraft's thrusters, he closed the distance until the two vehicles were perfectly aligned, proving once again his mastery of orbital navigation. While Aldrin ventured outside for 3 groundbreaking spacewalks, Lovell maintained flawless control of the craft, keeping its orientation stable so Aldrin could work without fighting against unplanned movements. This coordination between commander and pilot was essential. A single misstep could have sent Aldrin drifting away or compromised the mission entirely. The EVA success was a turning point for NASA. Aldrin, working from techniques he had developed in neutral buoyancy training pools, used footholds, handrails, and methodical pacing to conserve energy. Lovell's job inside the capsule was equally critical. He monitored Aldrin's oxygen levels, ensured that the cabin systems remained stable, and was ready to respond instantly to any emergency. The mission also included a number of scientific experiments and a controlled re-entry that brought Gemini 12 down within a few miles of the recovery ship, demonstrating that the astronauts could target landings with far greater precision than before. For Lovell, this mission confirmed his leadership skills in space and his ability to work seamlessly with a partner under intense technical demands. 2 years later, in December 1968, Lovell found himself on the crew of Apollo 8, a mission that would become one of the most historic achievements in human exploration. Originally scheduled as a test of the lunar module in Earth orbit, Apollo 8's objective changed radically when delays in lunar module production threatened the schedule for a moon landing. In a bold decision, NASA reassigned the mission to perform the first human flight to the moon, orbit it, and return, a plan that carried immense risk but promised a monumental leap forward. On December 21, Apollo 8 launched with Frank Borman as commander, Bill Enders as lunar module pilot, without a lunar module on this mission, and Lovell as command module pilot. Over the next 3 days, Lovell's navigation skills were put to the test as he calculated mid-course corrections to ensure their trajectory intersected perfectly with the moon's gravitational field. On Christmas Eve, the spacecraft slipped into lunar orbit, giving the crew and the world the first close-up view of the moon's far side. During the mission, Lovell played a central role in the now famous Earthrise moment, when the crew captured photographs of our blue planet rising above the moon's barren horizon. The broadcast that night, with all 3 astronauts reading from the Book of Genesis, became one of the most watched television events in history. Lovell's steady, almost understated presence during Apollo 8 reflected his deep professionalism. While the mission is often remembered for its poetic beauty, its technical demands were immense. Navigating to and from the moon without error required precision unlike anything attempted before. Lovell's flawless performance ensured Apollo 8 returned safely on December 27, cementing its place as a triumph of human courage and ingenuity. For Lovell, it was the prelude to an even greater test, commanding Apollo 13. In April 1970, Jim Lovell stepped into the commander's seat of Apollo 13, a mission intended to be NASA's third moon landing. For Lovell, this would be his 4th spaceflight and, potentially, the crowning achievement of his career, finally walking on the moon after years of preparation. His crew included command module pilot Jack Swigert, who replaced Ken Mattingly days before launch due to potential exposure to measles, and lunar module pilot Fred Hayes. The mission's goals were ambitious: land in the Framoro Highlands and conduct extensive geological exploration. The spacecraft launched on April 11, 1970, with no signs of trouble. Lovell, a picture of composure, guided the crew through the initial hours with steady confidence, joking with mission control and keeping spirits light. 2 days into the mission, while the crew performed routine maintenance, everything changed in an instant. A stir of the cryogenic oxygen tanks, an ordinary procedure, triggered a violent explosion. Warning lights flared. Systems failed in rapid succession. Swigert's voice, urgent but controlled, called out to Houston, "Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here." Lovell repeated the message more clearly for the record, "Houston, we've had a problem." The explosion had crippled the service module, draining the command module's electrical power and oxygen. The moon was suddenly out of reach. Now survival was the only objective. The lunar module Aquarius, originally meant for just 2 men for 2 days, became their lifeboat for all 3 astronauts for the 4-day journey home. Lovell's experience from Gemini and Apollo 8 became invaluable. He worked hand in hand with mission control, improvising procedures to conserve power and water. His calm demeanor set the tone for the crew. Panic was never an option. He navigated without the computer's full capabilities, relying on manual sightings of Earth and the Sun to guide the spacecraft. Every movement, every switch flip had to be deliberate, because any wasted energy or oxygen could spell disaster. In one crucial maneuver, Lovell piloted the lunar module to execute a burn that would swing them around the Moon and set them on a return course to Earth. This was no ordinary navigation. It had to be done with extreme precision, because they had only one shot. By the time Apollo 13 looped around the far side of the Moon, the crew was exhausted but focused. Lovell often thought about his family back on Earth, hoping they were reassured by the stoic updates broadcast from Houston. The mission had gone from a moon landing to a desperate race against time, but Lovell never let fear undermine the discipline required to make it home. The world watched and prayed as engineers and astronauts collaborated to invent solutions in real time, famously creating an improvised carbon dioxide filter using duct tape, plastic bags, and ingenuity. As the journey continued, Lovell's leadership was tested even further. Inside the freezing spacecraft, where condensation covered the walls and breath hung in the air, he kept the crew on a tight rotation of rest, monitoring, and tasks. He knew mental focus was as critical as physical endurance. On April 17, after a tense re-entry through Earth's atmosphere, Apollo 13 splashed down safely in the Pacific Ocean. The recovery ship USS Iwo Jima brought them aboard to cheers and relief. Lovell later described the mission as a successful failure, a term that perfectly captured its paradox. While they hadn't reached the Moon, they had achieved the near impossible, surviving in space with a crippled spacecraft. The Apollo 13 crisis became a defining example of teamwork, innovation, and leadership under extreme pressure. Lovell's role in keeping his crew alive cemented his place in spaceflight history. The mission would later inspire countless books, documentaries, and the 1995 film Apollo 13, where Tom Hanks portrayed him. Yet for Lovell, the experience was less about fame and more about the enduring lesson that preparation, trust, and calm resolve could overcome even the direst challenges. After Apollo 13, Lovell became an enduring symbol of resilience in the face of disaster. Retiring from NASA and the Navy in 1973, he entered the business world but never truly left the space community. He became a sought-after speaker, sharing the lessons of leadership, problem-solving, and teamwork he had lived in space. Audiences were struck by his humility. He never portrayed himself as a lone hero but as one part of a vast team that had made survival possible. His memoir, Lost Moon, co-written with Jeffrey Kluger, offered an insider's account of Apollo 13, blending technical detail with the human drama that unfolded. The book became a bestseller and served as the basis for Ron Howard's film adaptation. Lovell also embraced opportunities to mentor younger generations. He frequently spoke to students about science, engineering, and the importance of perseverance. His ability to connect spaceflight's high-stakes challenges to everyday decision-making made his talks resonate far beyond the aerospace community. He also participated in numerous NASA anniversaries, museum events, and public celebrations of space exploration, always willing to recount his experiences for those eager to hear them firsthand. Even in retirement, Lovell's ties to his fellow astronauts remained strong. He attended reunions and memorials, understanding deeply the bond that comes from sharing experiences few others could imagine. His leadership during Apollo 13 became a case study not just for space agencies, but also for businesses, military organizations, and educational institutions worldwide. Leaders analyzed how he maintained composure under pressure, balanced technical constraints with human needs, and communicated clearly in moments of uncertainty. In his later years, Lovell divided his time between family life and public engagements. He remained active well into his 90s, reflecting often on the arc of human space exploration and advocating for continued missions to the Moon and Mars. He believed passionately that the exploration of space was not just about technology, but about pushing human potential to its limits. On August 7, 2025, Jim Lovell passed away peacefully at the age of 97 in Lake Forest, Illinois. Tributes poured in from across the world. NASA administrators, astronauts past and present, political leaders, and space enthusiasts all acknowledged his extraordinary contributions. Many spoke of his courage, his intellect, and above all, his humanity. Tom Hanks, who had famously brought Lovell's Apollo 13 ordeal to life on screen, wrote that Lovell was a beacon of calm in the storm, a man who showed us all how to face the impossible. NASA called him a true pioneer whose legacy will live on among the stars. Lovell's life was more than a series of missions. It was a testament to what preparation, teamwork, and quiet determination can achieve. His story remains one of the most compelling in the history of space exploration, inspiring not only those who dream of traveling beyond Earth, but anyone who must navigate challenges with courage and grace. After Apollo 13 and his retirement from NASA and the U.S. Navy in 1973, Jim Lovell entered a new chapter of life, one that was less about strapping into rockets and more about sharing what he had learned from a lifetime of discipline, teamwork, and leadership under fire. Rather than fading from public view, Lovell became a respected public figure and an enduring ambassador for human space exploration. He moved into the private sector, working in various leadership roles, including as an executive at the Bay Houston Towing Company and later at Fisk Telephone Systems. While these business ventures kept him busy, it was his connection to space and education that truly defined his post-NASA years. Lovell became a sought-after speaker, traveling across the United States and internationally to talk about Apollo 13, spaceflight, and leadership. His storytelling style was captivating, not overly dramatic, but deeply human. He would describe the tension of navigating in a crippled spacecraft with the same measured calm he had in space, then connect that experience to challenges his audience might face in business, education, or daily life. His approach wasn't to tell people how extraordinary he was, but to show them that extraordinary results come from preparation, teamwork, and persistence. In 1994, Lovell co-authored Lost Moon with journalist Jeffrey Kluger, a gripping account of the Apollo 13 mission. The book combined technical accuracy with vivid personal recollections, offering readers an inside look at both the peril and the problem-solving that defined those tense days in April 1970. A year later, Ron Howard adapted Lost Moon into the Oscar-winning film Apollo 13, with Tom Hanks portraying Lovell. The movie introduced his story to a new generation and immortalized his calm voice in the face of disaster. Lovell embraced the attention, often attending film events, interviews, and anniversaries alongside his crewmates. Yet his legacy wasn't just in film and books, it was also in inspiring the next generation of scientists, engineers, and explorers. Lovell frequently visited schools, museums, and science centers, taking time to talk directly with students. He stressed that space exploration was not just about astronauts but about the thousands of people on the ground making missions possible. He urged young people to pursue careers in STEM, telling them that curiosity, discipline, and the ability to work well with others were as essential as technical knowledge. In 1999, the James Lovell Center for Science Education opened as part of the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, honoring his lifelong commitment to public science outreach. Lovell was deeply involved with the center, attending events, and continuing to advocate for ambitious space exploration programs. He remained an active voice in discussions about returning to the Moon, exploring Mars, and investing in both government and commercial space initiatives. Lovell's later years also included moments of nostalgia and reunion. He attended Apollo anniversary celebrations, reconnecting with former colleagues and reflecting on the risks and rewards of the space program. While he acknowledged that the era of the Apollo missions was unique, he believed the same spirit of exploration could drive humanity's next great achievements. His life after NASA was proof that you didn't need to be in space to make an impact, you could inspire change from right here on Earth. By the time Lovell reached his 90s, he was regarded not only as a legendary astronaut but as a symbol of leadership in adversity. He continued to give interviews, participate in documentaries, and support educational causes. The values he demonstrated in space discipline, humility, and teamwork remain the guiding principles of his life on Earth. Jim Lovell passed away on August 7, 2025, at the age of 97 in Lake Forest, Illinois. His death marked the end of an era for those who had grown up during the golden age of space exploration. The news quickly spread around the world, and tributes poured in from astronauts, scientists, political leaders, and admirers across generations. NASA issued a heartfelt statement, calling him a true pioneer whose legacy will live on among the stars. They noted not just his spaceflight achievements but also his commitment to inspiring the next wave of explorers. Tom Hanks, who had brought Lovell's Apollo 13 ordeal to life on screen, posted a moving tribute, describing him as a beacon of calm in the storm, a man who showed us all how to face the impossible. Fellow astronauts spoke of his unwavering steadiness, his kindness, and his ability to keep perspective in the face of danger. Many noted that Lovell never tried to take sole credit for Apollo 13's survival. He always insisted it was the result of a collective effort between the crew and the hundreds of people on the ground at Mission Control. In the days following his passing, space agencies, museums, and educational institutions across the globe honored him with moments of silence, special exhibits, and public talks about his legacy. Social media filled with photos of Lovell in his NASA jumpsuit, smiling with school children, and standing beside models of the spacecraft he once piloted. For many, these images captured his essence, a hero who never lost his humility. His family remembered him not only as a legendary astronaut but as a devoted husband, father, and grandfather. They spoke about his love for sailing, his quiet humor, and his lifelong curiosity. Even in his final years, Lovell followed space news closely, celebrating the successes of new missions and offering insights when asked. He had a particular interest in the rise of commercial spaceflight, seeing it as the next big chapter in humanity's exploration beyond Earth. Lovell's influence extended far beyond his own achievements. His story became a touchstone for leadership training in industries ranging from aviation to healthcare. Business schools studied the Apollo 13 mission as a master class in crisis management, often highlighting Lovell's ability to communicate clearly under pressure, make decisive calls with incomplete information, and maintain morale in extreme conditions. In the larger narrative of space exploration, Jim Lovell occupies a special place. He bridged the gap between the pioneering days of Gemini, the historic lunar flights of Apollo, and the future ambitions of Mars and beyond. His legacy is not only about surviving a disaster but about the values that survival represented: preparation, trust, teamwork, and courage. As the sun set on August 7, 2025, the world remembered Jim Lovell not simply as the commander of Apollo 13, but as a man whose life showed what humanity can achieve when it refuses to give up. His name remains etched in the history of exploration, a reminder that even when plans change and disasters strike, it is possible to return home against all odds.